Hello, my name is Teresita Blanco, the Artsy sister, and we're continuing with Saturnastra Woden. This is chapter 9. A maid came and served some grub for the children, and the only person eagerly digging into her food was Woden. And Woden did not touch her food, rather she got up and went into the kitchen, and she came back with tea and cookies, and she decorated for herself she concocted for herself a black tea combined with ginger, green carbano pulp, cinnamon, star anise, nutmeg, milk, and honey. And the aroma of the tea caught the boy's attention. And she poured for the pair and for herself and Woden, and she also poured me a teacup. And from their perspective, Woden had poured a cup for someone that was not there. And only Bryce was able to see me sipping my tea from my straw. And why hasn't Dad come to sit with us? Asked Bryce, looking at Woden. Because he's not feeling well, I thought, and he pulled something in his outfit, and now his neck hurts and something fierce, and he's getting treatment as we speak, explained Woden in a somewhat evasive manner. And Bryce made a motion to stand up, but Philip told him, sit down. And Bryce sat down, already used to being bossed around by his serious little brother, and of all the nice children, Philip was the only one who seemed the most mature. And once the kids finished their meals, the maid made a motion to take the place, but Woden got ahead of her, and she felt sheepish to let a little girl do her chores, and still, since the maid was not in particularly working to the moon, she allowed for Woden to do as she pleased. And Woden attacked the pots and kettle with eagerness, and soon they were sparkling clean. And she did the same to the plates and to the silverware too, and Bryce peeked into the kitchen and saw Woden performing menial labors with fastidious energy. And he was amused as I was, and when there was nothing else to be done in the kitchen, Woden went towards the garden to water the plants, and she drew water from the well and filled the can. And she then watered each and every plant, and turning around towards the tree, she made a motion to water them as well. And at this point I said to her, that is enough, Woden. Pouted Woden in response. And why don't we go pick a fight with Ethel, and the exercise will do us both some good, I suggested, jabbing at her. Said Woden again. Oh, come on, what's wrong? You can tell me, I said, picking up the water pail, and I proceeded to water the trees for her. I don't know, why is it bothering me so, said Woden. Just admit it, you feel sorry for Bruni. You're allowed to feel sorry for miserable people, I said, smiling. Said Woden. I said, echoing her sulkiness, and a cool wind passed in our direction originated from the forest, and there was the same smell of smoke, and this caused Woden to stand up and start running in the direction of the forest. And knowing her worries, I flew ahead of her, and if the wind carried the scent of smoke, it could only mean one thing. And the end of the Arun rigor was about to begin. If it was Ethel's work, not some gentle persuasion might put a stop to this advance. And if it was something natural, then I would have to get a shovel and get busy. And when I came to see Ethel, she was busy digging a grave, and I saluted her by saying, need a hand? It's fine, said Ethel sadly. It was bound to happen sooner or later. At least she died of old age. Not a lot of humans in this world have that luxury, I said sternly. Ethel, looking up from her work, said, there is certainly a lot of smoke. Yeah, you can sense the point of origin. Can you sense the point of origin, I asked. I could, but why would I bother to do so, said Ethel. Well, because this little house will burn down and everything your little mistress has collected will go up in smoke, I explained. I don't care, said Ethel lethargically. You are allowed to care for things, Ethel, I said, noticing one of them, my little servants. And I asked the fellow, do you know who's setting the fire? It is up yonder, and look for some clichés dressed in blacks with masks, and they are going with torches and ammonia cocktails, creating an advancing line of forest fire, explained the observer. And then I saw Woden flying in the direction, and I asked her, what took you so long? I was detained by Bryce's pointless questioning, though at least some good came of it. The boys are mobilizing the troops, and they are making a fire line. And if the rest of the town takes this threat seriously, they might just preserve their homes, said Woden. After saying this, we went together to see about the douches setting their place on fire, and the sun was starting to set behind us. And still the sky before us was a red glow, and there was a group of animals like elves, rabbits, squirrels, and wolves who were busy escaping. And when Woden saw her target, she used the wind magic to change the direction of the fire, and by adding a bit of circulation, she created a fire that would have started sucking the breeze and the assailants, and they were burned to cinders in a matter of minutes, and Woden coughed a little as a result of the flames. and I tried to cause some humidity, but this segment of the forest had not received a drop of water in weeks, and I asked Woden, can you summon us some water to handle this problem? I do not think it will be necessary, said Woden, and the fire started converging in one spot till they turned into ether, and on her chest she wore a pendant with a triangle, and if I remember my alchemy, the triangle was a symbol for fire, and the surroundings still smelled of brimstone, and the sky had changed, and the wind had changed direction, and we could smell fire coming from the town we had left, and looking in the direction of the flames, Eto said, it seems like a lot of work just to kill one man. Care to explain? Said I, and Woden in unison. Don't you know all the men that live there? Asked Eto. We are not too familiar with the ways of this town, I said. About 100 years ago, there was a big fuss in Veraguero, and Bersamin was apparently mortally wounded, and in preparation of his perceived early demise, he made a list of proposed candidates for his elders to choose after his death, and despite the fact that he pulled through, the list was never discarded, and from time to time, new names are added and removed, and as of now, there should be 35 names on his list of successors, explained Ethel. And you seem to know a lot more about this matter, I said, smiling as the plot thickened. I don't know of this because my mistress was informed a couple of days ago that she was in the list, and only the elders know of the candidates, and of course the candidates themselves, and they don't know the identities of each other for obvious safety reasons, explained Ethel. I don't know, this all seems like a big red herring, said Woden, folding her arms. And it was already nightfall when Woden came to Ethel's home, and she looked through all of the items in the hag's home, and together with the fire demon they cleaned the house over the top. And when walking back to town, Woden noticed torches, and a group of people were yelling Woden's name, and the first person to find Woden, ironically, was a blind knight. And he had the armor and the brown traveling coat and the family crest in the scabbard of his sword, and he had the sound of Woden's footsteps, and following her uneasy breathing, he picked her up and started stumbling back to town. And I noticed that he had a thin golden silk thread tied to his iron spool, and it was fastened to his right gauntlet, and he followed the thread back to town, occasionally stumbling a little. And Woden was quiet all throughout this proceeding, and she pondered a bit on her best course of action. You could drop to the floor, and I could take your place, I suggested. And then his ears pricked up a bit, and he came to look upon me with his creepy, greenish, milky eyes. And I came to look upon them very close, and they were flaying about in the usual manner akin to a blind person. And even when a fellow be blind, they could still detect a bit of movement. Not that it matters much since the night had fallen, and it was interesting to know that the blind knight had normal eyes, and I only said his eyes were creepy because of the intense look about them, and by now the town was within sight. And Turpin saw that the night came in Woden, and he ran in her direction. So he probably is not that the eye sensors were damaged, but like the optical nerves connecting to the eyes. And he whistled to let the other people searching in the forest know that Woden had been found. And picking her up, he asked, what were you doing in the forest? I came to see if the old witch who found me was alright, explained Woden. She's a grown woman and she can take care of herself, said Turpin, and he added, turning to the knight, and thank you very much, Fornas, for finding little Woden. The girl is quite a handful. I only did as my duty demanded. There's no need to thank me, said Fornas, bowing. It's dark. Do you have a place to stay? Asked Turpin. I do not, for I was only passing through town, said Fornas. So yourself, said Turpin, not desiring to assist, and Woden rested her chin on Turpin's shoulder while he carried her back. And as he walked, she followed with her eyes the movement of the blind knight Fornas, and he too followed with his eyes, but not Woden's movement, but mine. And I asked him, can you see me? Can you hear me? And Fornas said, I can see you. Bright stormy Woden is often trailed by a demon, and by sensing your malevolent intents, I was able to scout for Woden. Isn't that lovely? And I do have plenty of other intents, not all of them wicked. You caught me in a bad day, I said, excusing myself. There is no good or bad time for wicked demons such as yourself, said Fornas, starting to make his way towards the road. And do you often have conversations with yourself? I asked hourly. Verily, and in so much as company that affords me much room for contemplation, explained Fornas. Not all our behaviors are wicked, and depending on our mood, we may act upon the better nature we once had, I said coolly. And just to make you see that I am a nice person, when I have a mind to do so, why don't I return your eyesight, if it pleases you? Only the gods have the power to perform such a big feat, and demons like you can only cause harm, said Forna, slashing at me with his sheathed sword. And had I been one of the local fiends, the scarab would have been rather painful, and this one only passed right through me, and the ineffectiveness of his sacred holy sword gave Fornas plenty to think about. Eventually he said, "You are not as the others." "So I have been told," I added, "and since you're not interested in recovering your eyesight, I will be on my way." I started to make my way back to town, and along the way I ran into Esther, who was eavesdropping on the conversation, and folding her arms she said, "You do not have the power to heal people." "Yes, I do. You ever heard the saying, 'Let the miracle be done, even if the miracle comes from the devil'?" I said, proudly pointing at my chest. "What is a devil? Is it another word for demon?" asked Ethel. More or less. Potato, potato," I said, struggling. "The main difference between you and me is that I make my milk money by pesting people instead of burning them into a crisp." "Milk money? Do you mean souls?" asked Ethel. "Apparently my people no longer collect souls. One day I had to meet a monthly quota of 30 souls, and then suddenly there is no hell anymore," I said, frowning. "Hell? What is hell?" asked Ethel. This situation, for example," I said, making my way back to town. Because, this book takes place after the end of the world. Ethel made efforts to strike up a conversation, but I continued to stoically ignore her, and when I came to town, I saw the fire break line, and with everyone mobilized, the fire had not been able to enter the city, and it was still rather smoky, and the air was heavy, and from time to time the ground would crack with the sound of still burning timber. And myths inside the town were numbers of wild animals, and the people were busy about the fire break to bother about the intruders, and I did notice a couple of douches making attempts at the houses, testing to see if people were at home or whatnot. And I saw one trying a house, and then I said to him, I should try that orphanage over yonder. A woman with a bunch of kids is easy picking." And the man interpreting my words as his son started making his way towards Lady Josepha's orphanage. So yeah, like the demon put bad thoughts into the thief's head. I lingered a little to see what would happen, and the thief jumped the fence, and the moment he tried opening the door, his face was skewered by a spear. And while the little maids lack in education, apparently they made up for in combat training. And maybe we would have seen some of it had we bothered to linger in the orphanage for more than a day. Then again, with enough running speed, even a novice can impel any fellow. Esther observed my proceeding with great interest, and it was certainly food for thought to see how a primordial demon worked, and people only need a little push to turn on one another, and at times no effort is required at all. Still, the impaling scene felt a little bit too excessive, and when I returned to Sir Bruin's home, I met up with Woden, who was locked up in her bedroom, and I saw her scratching at the window, fake crying. "Woden wants out." "Nobody's here to hear you whine, little Woden," I remarked. "Well, you are here, aren't you?" said Woden, smiling coolly. "Did you eat your dinner?" I asked. "I think they forgot to feed us with the whole fire and the mayhem," explained Woden. "And what of little Jotun?" I asked. "Philip got a hold of her as soon as talks of fire happened, and she's not the sort of person to wander too far from the place she feels comfortable in," said Woden. "And Cinnamon?" I asked. "Here it is," said Woden, going under the bed and dragging out the cat. And the cat clawed at Woden while it bit the arm she was using to carry it, and putting it back down, the cat proceeded to scratch and bite at the ends of her nightgown. And Eto looked at the cat with keen eyes, and the cat looked at Eto and hissed at her. And Woden's eyes tonight had a dreamy sort of aura about them, and she was staring at the sky in search of something that was not there. And instead of a single pale moon she was accustomed to, she was greeted by hundreds of cold celestial rocks, and the night sky was anything but boring, and there was not a single day where it looked the same, and it was a wonder why more people were not studying the sky or even making silly pictures of it. It's just that the world of Saturn, it got dozens of moon and obviously the fancy ring, so whenever you look at the sky, it never looks the same way at night. I suppose what is normal for some is extraordinary to others, and Woden looked down again to gaze at her hands in disappointment, and she had those cute little baby nails. And Eto was the one to ask Woden, "What are you looking at?" Today there was supposed to be a lunar eclipse, and the moon was so going to get all dark and red and creepy, and on this same day millions of years ago the air was cold and also windy too. and it seemed like something exciting was going to happen, like there were supernatural forces at work, said Woden, remembering something she had not experienced. Did anything happen? I said. No, nothing at all. Nothing ever happened back then, and it was always the same nothingness, said Woden, sighing. And Woden opened the window and jumped out, and the canned cinnamon, somewhat amused, followed along, and the girl made her way towards the center of the garden where a fountain once stood. And Woden repeated, yes, nothing did happen, but in the place between this, that, and the rest, eclipses are portents of powerful forces. And humans are always thinking silly nonsense about the time and space and the stars, I said, sighing, again with your celestial bodies. I too looked up at the sky, and I imagined seeing the lights move from my original home, and I imagined it turning red as 7 creatures were attacking it, and it was during a night like this that I was sealed away for good, and I was to pretend to be king, and when the outsiders came for him, I was imprisoned and turned into a dish instead of him, and I do not know how long I lay there. Still, this is all ancient history for some, and with most things there's a silver lining. I at least avoided the war that annihilated the majority of my demon kind. And good riddance, I say. And I raised an eyebrow when I noticed the grass growing and twirling around Woden. And with so much desired rain, both Woden and the grass grew till they acquired a mature height. And when I say mature, I mean that loosely. Instead of being a chubby little brat, Woden now had the body of a slender 14 or 16-year-old girl. And at the first major growth spurt, these people would not grow again unless if they had a mind to do so. And it was usually the first one that determined the flavor or the type of person they would become for the rest of their lives. And their physical growth was an outward manifestation of their maturity. With her new witty-like growth, Woden started walking out of the garden with a steady step, and she only turned to look at the ugly firebreak, and indeed those outsiders had made a number of the natural beauty of the forest. And the rain that followed had given the rest a nice murky texture, and it was a wonder how there were not have been any landslides. And Woden started walking through the decaying forest, and with each step she took, grass and greenery grew, and dormant seeds of pines and deciduous trees started to grow and take root. And quite marveled, Ethel asked me, how is she doing that? With magic, obviously, I said. But why doesn't she use words of magic or pentagrams? Asked Ethel. According to some of her father's books, those words and symbols are mnemonic devices created by humans. Just as the written word was created by humans, so were the tools to utilize a primordial force before logos, trees, and birds existed, and what you call them doesn't change their nature. And as such, magic words do not affect the spell. Rather, it is the mage who has the power to craft a ether into something usable. I explained to the best of my ability what I understood of magic. So magic words are useless, said Ethel. More or less for the uninitiated, and if you live and practice magic enough, you will learn not to require them, I explained. And words are only relevant as far as spiritual powers are concerned, and with words, God created people and their spirits, and with words they can tap into the creative essence, and it's all about the intentionality behind the words you use. And Woden turning to me said, if you are done with your crash course on magic, where do you suggest we go? Back home, perhaps, suggested Ethel. I can go for another 20 years or so, and I forget. And I already set the alarm on the calendar, said Woden. You could go back to the nice house with the nice people, I suggested. I can go back there, said Woden, and she looked down to the silica cinnamon following behind, and turning to her, she said, you should return home. The cat meowed a couple of times, and Woden then said, picking it up, I suppose you're right. And it was now a couple of hours before midnight, and she flew in the direction of the old witch's hut with a cat under her arm, and Ethel and I followed behind with the usual languid curiosity of our kind, and I lay down on the bed on the empty spot of her garden to gaze into the sky, and around me I could hear Woden and Ethel dusting off the place. And more than once I heard a shrill scream from Woden, and I know that scream all too well. It was the usual Gregor's, pero roaches. And one scurried by and passed beneath my feet, and it was at that moment that I decided to suppress my physicality till the past problem had been dissolved. And the first thing that Woden did was get all the furniture out, and the cool night air was crisp with a faint smell of burning pine. And I coughed a little when the wind changed direction. And if it kept up in that pattern, we might end up having a little tornado. And closing my eyes, I imagined a little swirly cloud formation followed by the familiar shape. And the trees should then rock back and forth, and even a couple would dislodge, and I pictured for myself a deer falling on top of a carriage or something. And my ruminations and daydreamings were interrupted when Woden said, There are no tornadoes in this part of the country, and most of you ever see are dust devils. And the cat came to stand beside me, enthusing, lost in thoughts, and a relative peace was shattered by a group of people coming to the witch's hut. And the group had a couple of familiar faces. These included Pipa and Turpin, and the group were carrying torches in the darkness and were armed to the teeth. Woden saluted them by saying, "How may I help you? Are you in need of herbs or cures?" "We have healers now, so we don't need to rely on your sketchy service, witch," said Pipa, and she was dressed like a man with a rapier. And Turpin, looking sternly, "Where is Woden?" "Right here," said Woden, pointing to herself. "You monster, you ate her," said Pipa, turning white. "Look, you idiot, I was pointing at my heart, and I need not suffer your insult just because you do not know basic anatomy." "As I said, I am Woden," said Woden. "I don't believe you," said Pipa, noticing the recently dug grave. "Oh, that this is the grave of the witch who formerly lived in this hut. Since she died, I decided to take possession of her worldly belongings," explained Woden. Seeing as though they were not convinced, she added, There are shovels over yonder. You are welcome to dig at the stiff if it pleases you." Turpin and two other men in the party took the shovels and started to dig the stiff, and when Eto came out with a crazy yell, "What are you bastards doing?" And they stopped and cowered, noticing the fire demon. And the priest came forward and started reciting a prayer, and Eto, somewhat deflated, went back inside the hut. And Woden was unfazed by the weird religious paraphernalia, and it was a scented cloth tied to a ring to keep it from falling. And the ring itself had impressive-looking orbicular jasper, and the jasper was white with yellow and black irregular patterns, and manifesting near the priest, I said, "That is a cool jasper, mister." "Away with your demon," said the priest, before repeating some more nonsense I chose to ignore. And like Woden, I had trained myself to be very selectively deaf to avoid falling into the influence of prayers. And this could only be done when I had a degree of physicality, and to shield my soul, I would also close my eyes as well, and then I would open my provisional eyes from within my head and wings, and since they were small, and it being so dark, the priest thought I could not see him, and when Woden spoke again, I allowed myself to hear once again. Alright, so this is a good place to leave it. Bye-bye and God bless.